Hello and welcome to Retro Encounter, episode 117. This week we are covering the Belgian surrealist RPGMaker 2003 game, Off, from 2008. But before that, I'll introduce myself and my illustrious co-hosts. I'm your host this week, Robert Fenner, and joining me today are Nilson, Carroll.
Woo! Illustrious. That was really nice of you.
And Mike Sollosi.
Happy New Year, 11 or 12 days ago.
Happy New Year. So yeah, as I said, Off is it's a surrealist game by the Belgian creator Mortis Ghost, with music by alias Conrad Coldwood. The game was first released in French in 2008, with a English sanctioned fan translation following shortly after by a group called Reconstructed Dragon, which I think actually might be an individual, not a group. But yeah, this is an RPGMaker 2003 game, back when RPGMaker 2003 was illegal software to have. That is no longer the case. Enterbrain caved to, I wouldn't say caved to demand, more like they saw that people were still using this software and decided to do an official English language release. So if you want to buy a copy of RPGMaker 2003 to tool around, you can. But yes, this is a very, very bizarre little game it uses quite a minimal aesthetic with scanned drawings and scanned pages of encyclopedias and textbooks to make up its graphics. Plot is boy, where can we even start with the plot? You, the player, have been assigned the role of the batter, a savior who looks like a baseball player as he embarks on a quest to purify the world.
I'm not sure the plot meaningfully changes from that premise for the first 80% of the game or so.
Yeah.
And his definition of purifying is eliminating all, ghosts and hostiles in the worlds he travels through. And the worlds he travels through are, I guess, 4 named stages that appear to be in some kind of, some kind of other world, or maybe even an underworld. It's a little weird describing the setting of this game.
Yeah, it's very peculiar. Is it the first time you two have played this game? I'll start with you, Mike.
This is the first time I've even heard of this game. And when we were planning on the games to play in January, this was one that was suggested in a long list. And so when I was going through all the list of games and saw this one and briefly researched it, I decided this thing looks crazy. Anyone else interested? And then you two answered the call.
How about you, Nilson?
Yeah, I remember when this game was first translated into English a while back. I played it. I'm a big I really like weird RPG Maker games, so it was definitely on my radar. But I hadn't played it since then.
It was never on my radar because I had, I think, a bit of a weird prejudice against RPG Maker games because I don't know, like I like a lot of indie RPGs, but translated from French 2003 RPG Maker game made in 2008 is a little too indie and unpublished for me. So this was not on my radar at all until perhaps a month and a half ago when we were discussing what games to play this month.
I was aware of this, same as you, Nilson. I think when the English fan translation first came out, I was kind of on the hunt for. I was really broke at the time, and I was just on the hunt for like weird indie games that subverted the RPG format. And I think this one does it very, very admirably. But yeah, Mike, like yourself, there's so much badness in RPG Maker. So you really you have to stray from the format or be very, very proficient with the engine to do something notable in it. And while in terms of mechanics, Off doesn't do anything particularly. It doesn't stray very far from the default engines of RPG Maker 2003, which aren't very compelling engines. But like the world building and the audio visual design of this game sets it apart from its contemporaries in a very special way. And working your way through this mystery, if you can even really call it a mystery, is quite the experience. And I really, really love this game. As I mentioned, I really, really love this game's audiovisual aesthetics. The music by alias Conrad Coldwood, it's very kind of like industrial and sparse, and uses chopped up bits of old-timey music.
I would also be remiss to mention there is one song at the end of the game performed by a Miss Judy Garland in 1939.
Yeah, there is. It's the odd one out.
But I agree. But I agree with you that the sort of quasi-industrial bulk of the soundtrack, the original portions of the soundtrack, are a little disarming and very, very interesting. I thought it was a cool audio profile overall. Yeah,
there's like a little bit of a like Chu Ishikawa and Tetsuo the Iron Man kind of thing going on in some parts of it. And the world itself, it's sparse and geometric and uses pastel colors and low detail, and like it kind of reminds me of like an NES golf game almost, but like by way of like the color palettes of like Paladin's Quest, or there's even a little bit of Mother or Earthbound in there, like ever so slightly.
The way how the rectangular all of the things like the doors and sprites were reminded me of a particular favorite game, The Seventh Saga, which we've talked about in the previous episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I basically agree. It feels like a late NES, early SNES kind of look with a lot of very vivid colors, and each one of the zones is very monochrome. Like in the I don't know, in Zone 2, almost everything in the outer world is pink, but in the library and the mall, everything is a deep blue.
Yeah.
And so it's not a lot of there's a lot of color variety between zones, but not a lot of color variety within each zone, which is an interesting tonal choice. There's a lot of color, but sometimes it feels too much of one color. It made things like in the mall, which is one of the more labyrinthine parts of the game. It made the rooms feel a little bit they all looked the same.
Yeah, so some of those like maze portions are a bit of a pain, I gotta say.
Yeah.
So right out of the gate, Off is a game that breaks the fourth wall when you take control of the batter and you're asked to put in your own name, and characters start addressing you by the pronouns of your choice. And the first thing you're told to do is to seek the judge if you have more questions. And the judge is this creepy cat with this big smile who just speaks in riddles and
very Cheshire Cat.
Yeah. But he's got this very particular deliberate way of speaking I really appreciate. Like when he asks if you want to do the combat tutorial, he asks, would you like me to teach you the art of violent confrontation? And I really like the way that's worded.
I also liked how several characters in the game have like an audio bite that plays whenever they say something. And the judges is a very obviously human Mao. that I always enjoyed hearing.
So as you said earlier, Mike, Off is made up of a number of discrete areas called zones, where you are helping the batter on his quest to purify areas. So Zone 0 starts as this smallish tutorial area which will show you the ins and outs of combat and engaging with what you'll encounter the most in this game. And these are like relatively light numerical puzzles where usually you're given a combination and then you have to transpose that to an unmarked keypad or some variation thereof to open doors. So this is very much, I think it's very much more of a puzzle game than it is an RPG. I think the battles are really there just for the sake of seeing the bizarre art and filling in some of the gaps of what the denizens of this world are like. And you're not playing this for like a challenge or experience of like building up your RPG characters to. To those ends. It's kind of like set dressing.
Play on auto battle the whole game.
Not the whole game, but maybe 75% of the game. Like I didn't have it on for boss fights, And sometimes if like someone got poisoned, I would switch out of auto battle and remove the poison, because you and your circle buddies die very quickly if someone gets poisoned. And we should talk about this the character art and enemy art soon. But I mostly agree with Rob. The combat is only there because there is combat elements to the game. Like the batter is there to kill ghosts and defeat the bosses of these zones, so naturally there's a combat system to fight them. But like the random battles really seem auxiliary and maybe not even necessary.
Like, frankly, I would find this to be a more compelling experience if, like, not if the battles were missing completely, but if there was less of them. Like, if there were just a few discrete encounters that, you know, you don't really have to grind in this game, but you are put through the paces with a rather high encounter rate in some areas, and it doesn't seem necessary.
You're right. Grinding really isn't necessary. I beat the game at level 17 or so, and when I was looking around for background information on the game after I beat it, I saw on some FAQ or maybe a wiki page that the batter learns skills up to level 50 or 60.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So and that seems so unnecessary. It's like, did you really have to plan this far ahead? The skill and experience curve doesn't even go anywhere near that. Like I wasn't challenged by the last few battles at level 17.
Well, maybe that's part of like the Dadaist theme, really, of like putting these skills in that are completely useless, and you would have to spend an inordinate amount of time with the limited content in this game to reach them. I can't imagine that would be a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't put in there by accident, but it still is head scratching, and I think that this is really just sort of a dark surrealist story with the trappings of an old school RPG, and maybe they took the idea of having the trappings of an old RPG so seriously that they built this. They gave you partners or party members that are very uninvolved, and they built like a skill system with levels into 50 plus. Which I know it's a choice, but I think it's an eyebrow raising choice.
Yeah, it is definitely. Did you want to talk a little bit about the characters themselves and the art, Mike? You mentioned that.
Sure. The art looks like hand drawn sketches, but I'm sure it's some very complicated sort of pixel art involved.
I think some of it is, and some of it is pixel.
Like a lot of it reminds me of like hand-drawn illustrations for a newspaper or something. Like the way the batter looks in battle is a batter in sort of mid-swing stance, but it doesn't look like sprite art or pixel art. It looks like someone took a drawing of a baseball player from 1910 and then put it into a video game. And at certain sections of the game where they're explaining to you what is happening in a certain region, like the 4 workplaces in Zone 1 and the industrial area in Zone 3, they go into like old-timey illustrations of people working in factories and offices. Yeah. And that seems like an illustration from a textbook or newspaper and not pixel art or RPG art. And the enemies themselves are a twisted mess. Oh my god! Like some of the ghosts look like relatively normal ideas of what you think a cartoon ghost would look like.
Yeah.
But then you have like office workers with black trunks sprouting out of their necks, and like some H.P. Lovecraft nonsense. And in the hidden areas at the end of the game, when you revisit zones after they've been purified, you fight these like they look like diseased babies wearing wrestling singlets.
Oh, the secretaries, they're horrible.
Oh yeah, and yeah, it's really twisted, and again they look like characters out of horror fiction, and the game does take more of a horror dark tone towards the end, but it's again it's a little hard for me to explain it, but it's a very and all the art is all of the art of your of the characters and enemies is in black and white, even though the backgrounds in battle continue the sort of pastel color palette going on. That it's very particular and specific, and sometimes unsettling.
Most definitely. How about you, Nilson? Anything to add?
Yeah, well, just talking about like the battle system and like it's like really annoying to have to fight through all these random encounters, but I like the idea of like this RPG Maker system as a vehicle for telling jokes and like being weird, and like it kind of stinks that like you actually have to like fight the actual battles to get those jokes. But it's really appreciated, and I think they do a good job with like taking the system that RPG Maker gives you and like really running with how weird it can be. I like it. I dig it, even though it's kind of a waste of time at certain points.
I mean, like, a lot of the core battle mechanics are pretty much just what you get in RPG Maker 2003, but the enemy behaviors and the designs, and, of course, like, all the writing around it, like the skill names and what these skills do, and the skill animations are all, they all add so much to the package, that, yeah, it does eventually get boring, because there's just too many battles to hold up what this game is meant to be, but... Sorry, I'm having a really big rainstorm here, so I hope my rain isn't coming in on the mic. You know, there's just so many moments that make it worth it. Like when you're climbing to the top of this library and you have to fight like a screen-filling whale as a random encounter, is joyous.
Yeah, that one was unexpected.
Yeah,
because there is no other marine life anywhere else in the game at all.
No, there's really not. But the batter's not alone in his quest. He finds these they're not called upgrades, are they? Add-ons.
Add-ons, yeah.
Yeah. He finds 3 add-ons throughout the course of his journey. The Alpha, Omega, and Epsilon, who have the classes, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And each of them, they're like a kind of different RPG party member. There's one who specializes in status ailments, one who heals, and then another who buffs, as well as has like the only multi-target spells in the game. So they're all like fairly weak and kind of feel a little bit useless.
And also, we should mention that they're identical featureless circles.
Yes,
that
they
just
are.
Float in the air next to you. They reminded me of the option power-ups that you can pick up in a Gradius game.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
that follow you and shoot whenever you shoot. But it was... I was puzzled as to why they have their inclusion, and I think at least 2 of them are. I think at least one of them is optional. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the final one you kind of have to go, not exactly out of your way, but it's in a side room that you don't have to go to.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, something like extra party members, I'm used to them being a little more meaningful.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're flying happy circles.
Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah, like it's weird because like a JRPG party member is such a great way to like include more characters into a story, but it's interesting how defiant like the devs were here. Like, we want you to have party members, but like they're completely meaningless. They don't have any personality, but like we just need them for the sake of having more complex battles. It's real jarring. But I think kind of smart. And by like the end of the game, like I'm kind of into, like getting equipment and like seeing which equipment is like the best for my circles, and like it wasn't like complete, like that side of an RPG wasn't completely thrown out.
Yeah.
Like you want to get through the battles as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with the creator wanting to have the trappings of an RPG in this game. Like you have party members and there's equipment, even though the equipment doesn't seem to raise your stats that much. Like the first couple ones will raise like your stats from 58 to 60 or something. Mm-hmm. And it's always that sort of increment. But I think he wanted to have the stuff that's part of an RPG because he wanted to make it an RPG, but ultimately have those things not be that necessary. Because, like you said, having more party members allows you to include more voices and personalities and more dialogue and visual interest, but the 3 add-ons add none of that because they're identical and don't have any dialogue and may even be optional. So it's a weird choice, making them that way. But I mean, and there's the obvious, Bible analogy, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Which, but I mean, hey, here we are.
Well, Nilson mentioned the developer being very defiant, and I mean, like, the other people in this world are pretty defiant too. Like, most of the people that you meet are these sheepish townsfolk and office workers who just they really want to fall into line, and they pride safety over everything else. So, like, most of the books in the library are fake, so they don't have to, like, ruffle some pages or damage any books because that could get too dangerous. Or, the judge, this cat, I mean, he's very much got his own agenda, and he's very happy to leave this quest up to you, the player, to guide the batter. And then most of the other characters you beat are the bosses of these areas, who are either in control of these specters, or believe they are, or believe that you are sent by somebody to do something, which I suppose in a way you are.
My very first theory for what this game was about was that it was some circle of hell, or perhaps purgatory, because all of the townsfolk that you meet are trapped either in their workplace or in some form of comfort when it's like what's going on around them is clearly wrong. Like the office workers in Zone 1 just memorize the same numbers and are repeating the same numbers on permits over and over and over, or they're cutting cows in half to harvest metal from inside them.
Yeah,
or they're working in mines where they have to breathe in smoke to live, and it's like this is a very interesting. I don't know whether you would want to call it a satire or just a spoof on the workplace, but this is messed up, and the boss is hostile and cruel.
Yeah, Deadan. He's this like man in like a military jacket and no shirt, and he's got like kind of like a worm face with teeth, and he's just like screaming at everybody and giving them a hard time, and they're all like very upset about it. But like he's always threatening to kill people, but it seems like just to get them to fall into line, and they do every time.
And also, yeah, and like you said before, the workers value comfort and routine, and all they ever talk about is either their job or possibly getting transferred to the nicest part of Area 1, or the nicest area in Zone 1. I forget what it was called.
Alma.
That was it.
Yeah.
They all either talk about their job or being transferred to Alma, which seems like a very faint hope, because Alma is unpopulated.
This first leg through Zone 1, in fact, the first leg of the game through Zone 1, it's kind of like a Shaggy Dog story. Like, you're sent in to exterminate the ghosts from the ghost inspectors from the smoke mines. But like on the way through the smoke mines, you get sidetracked and have to go to the metal farm and clear the ghosts out of the barn there, and then you end up having to go to the post office and clear the ghosts there, and like nobody can remember. Like, it's all these admin workers with their numbers, and like nobody can remember what floor the post office is on, because there's like 100,000 floors in this building, so you have to like determine which one is saying the floor of the post office, and then like enter that value into the elevator.
This game loves their number mini games.
Yeah. And, Mike, as you said, like this satire of just meaningless busy work. I mean, the people in the smoke mines, they're bottling the smoke and sending it away. And then the people in the post office, they receive packages filled with plastic and then repackage them and send them back out.
Yeah.
And they say, one of them, I made a note of, one of them said, without plastic, there's no boundaries. People would just walk and walk without ever stopping.
And also we should mention that they keep identifying the 4 cardinal elements of the world as smoke, metal, plastic, and meat.
Yeah.
and then they refine meat into sugar in Zone 3 in a way that we'll get to in a little bit. And they say that sugar is the secret 5th element, which is, I mean, all right. I mean, how many RPGs have we played where it's, earth, wind, fire, and water spells of some nature interacting? And I guess this is, I assume this is another, parody of, ancient Greek level alchemy.
Yeah. And the meat flows like, I mean, plastic flows like water here, but so does meat. And you, a striking point early on is when you have to ride this swan-shaped pedalo through the meat fountains.
I love that.
It's so damn
The
weird.
sound that plays when you're swimming through the meat is probably my favorite sound effect in the game.
It's really good.
gross.
It's really sloppy.
There's a lot of good sound effects. I'm still really attached to the judge's meow, though. That's pretty great.
So you fight through zone 1 until you reach Alma, and you come to Dead End's office, and he feels frustrated that you've been killing the specters because that's his job as the ruler of this area, and he challenges you to the first boss fight in the game. And I guess there's not a lot to say here other than the bosses in these games the bosses in this game have far too many hit points for their own good. And
yes.
I guess they want you to look at that art and listen to the music, but these battles just go on for far too long, and they're not challenging. I mean, your main verbs are to just keep laying on attack skills and healing when necessary, and like
Fight, magic item, run?
Yeah.
Question mark.
Basically, yeah. Some bosses allow you to poison them, but not very many. And poison is extremely potent in this game, whether you're using it on foes or having it used on you. So it's worth trying.
The only times any of my characters fell or came close to falling was due to poison, because the skills and combat are really rudimentary, as you mentioned, and again, those bosses are more just an exercise of attrition and attention span rather than skill. Like and the art is admittedly quite striking, especially the boss of Zone 2, which we can get to soon, I guess. But
that made me kind of sad.
yeah, me too. But we can talk about it. But I basically agree. Like a lot of the fighting in Off seems pointless, and I wish there was less of it. And that includes the boss HP levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but defeating Dead End gives us the cancer card to enter Zone 2. Each time you beat a boss of an area, you get a Zodiac theme card that allows you entry into the next area. And Zone 2 is this kind of pink sparse metropolis that you mentioned earlier, which starts centered around this deep blue library, which is full of fake books and fake bookshelves. And the first thing you see when you get to this library is these the librarian and somebody else is. They're upset that somebody's been tearing the pages out of books, and it could be very, very dangerous.
I was upset that someone was tearing pages out of books.
Yeah, that's not right. But
right?
There are
put that guy in candy jail or whatever's going on in this world.
Well, like to the point where they're afraid to go on the floor where the torn out book pages are. So.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a whole lot to say here. You find these pages throughout the library and determine. I think each of the pages in these torn out books, they're printed with a different suit and number of a card of a deck of cards, and you have to match up the pages with the appropriate books, and that unlocks the 4th floor of the library, where you first meet the boss of this area, which is a cat who looks like the judge, who calls himself Japhet, the ruler of the area, and he's an interesting one. He's
Yeah, he seems less aggressive than Dedan was, but definitely
he's frustrated.
He's disillusioned and frustrated that he's the ruler of the area, but no one will pay attention to him.
Yeah, I think like after you beat him, you go back outside and he's like giving a speech to the townspeople who are like, "Oh, look at the cute kitty." Where's that voice coming from?
Yep, that's right around the midpoint.
When
you're going through the residential area.
Okay, it was at that point.
That's before you fight Japhet.
Yeah. I gotta say, my favorite part of this area was summoning the pedalo to take you to the amusement park, where they've closed down the roller coaster because it's too scary. So like the new roller coaster is just like a bunch of office chairs lined up on the lawn, and everybody's sitting on them, and they're like, "Oh no, this is a bit much."
Yeah.
And then, like, you unlock this path to the roller coaster, and you end up, like, pushing a statue of the shopkeeper into the roller coaster with you, and you guys ride together and get a photograph taken.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You can use that. You can use that to get into the boss's office and get some treasure chests.
Yeah, that's lovely.
That was a very nice RPG style puzzle. I enjoyed that. Oh, and you can sell the photo later for 500 gold or whatever.
Oh, can you? Oh, I kept both photos till the end. I had a photo of me writing a solo as well, and I'd look at them from time to time near the end of my quest to remember how things were when things were easier.
Oh, that's really sad.
But we should talk about the eventual boss fight against Japhet, because I think it's one of the most visually interesting fights in the game, and also kind of sad because, I mean...
You find the story of why Japhet feels the way he does. He created this area as a utopia, and then, like, all of the townspeople became too neurotic and obsessed with keeping safe. Which is, why the library is the way it is and why the amusement park is the way it is. And Japhet just completely flipped out about this and lost his mind and got these delusions of I'm going to make this the best world no matter what. And when we confront Japhet, I think the judge appears and he's like, well, that's not Japhet, that's my brother Valerie.
And earlier in the mall,
go on.
In the mall, the judge tells you that he has a brother Valerie that he thinks lives in the mall, but he hasn't seen him around in a while. And when you fight Japhet, the judge joins you up the tower and says, "Wait," and said, "What do you mean, Japhet? You're Valerie, isn't that you? This is my brother Valerie." And it comes to be revealed that Japhet is a bird, or who might even be a phoenix or something. And who is possessed the body of the judge's brother Valerie. And so throughout the boss battle, you see the tiny bird emerge from the cat, and eventually, like, you're fighting this massive firebird with the skin or the corpse of a cat hanging off its head, which is a little disturbing, especially if you enjoy cats as many of us do. And I have to wonder, did Japhet do that intentionally, or did poor Valerie catch and eat a bird not without realizing that it was a powerful phoenix god?
Well, that's what Japhet says. He says that Valerie caught him and ate him, but he didn't die.
That was it, right?
So that's
okay. That wasn't totally sure, which doesn't make it any less effed up.
Yeah. The judge is watching while this happens, and he gets pretty upset by it. And
right, I think that's reasonable.
And once you defeat Japhet, the judge kind of he loses his stoicness and his mysterious mentor qualities, and just kind of has a little bit of a breakdown in grief, and he goes off to try and work things out and get over it, as you would. It's pretty sorrowful.
It's really, I really like the idea. So, when you're playing, Final Fantasy and you're fighting, the final boss, and he keeps, changing forms, and he gets, bigger and bigger or whatever, and, this is, a really great subversion, really, horrible subversion of that.
It really is.
It's, I think that battle's one of the more effective surprises in the whole game. It's if you didn't know that was gonna happen, it's really shocking that it happens, and I've never seen anything quite like that in a video game before. So I thought that was a really effective moment.
I
don't think it is freaky. I don't think the transforming affects gameplay the way it does in the final boss of a Dragon Quest game. I mean, doesn't Sorrow the Manslayer transform 5 times in his fight in Dragon Quest IV?
Something like that, yeah.
At least.
Yeah, something like that. So this is again this isn't even my final form kind of joke, or spoof of that RPG boss battle thing. But
maybe it's Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, where he transforms when he has less hit points.
Right, but it's they add in a cat and bird body horror element that I neither expected nor wanted, I think.
Yeah. It's pretty horrible. So, beating Japhet, that Purify Zone 2. I should have mentioned earlier, whenever we beat one of these bosses and Purify a Zone, these chapters, if you could call them that, are punctuated by a scene of like a coughing child or like a coughing baby in this room who remarks that one of these rulers has died, and he doesn't seem very happy about the proceedings. And we'll find out more about this kid later. But we move on to Zone 3, which is this factory district where probably my least favorite part of the game. You get this stamp card that functions as a map, and if you go into this big room, and if you don't adhere to this map perfectly, you'll trigger a not insignificant random battle, and then get teleported out of the room and have to start over again. So when it gives you a couple of paths that you have to follow onto each other in a very specific way, and it's really annoying and not good.
Yeah, it is annoying. It does help that it's not that hard to go back and heal yourself to full, because save points are abundant in this game, and they do heal you to full health and mana or whatever
they do. That's wonderful.
Yeah, another reason why the battles feel pointless is that it's really easy. There's like before you're even thinking about using an item to heal yourself, there's another save point to heal you up to full. But I agree that part was annoying, and also the around the middle of, or actually I guess towards the end of Zone 3, there's a bunch of corridors of just doors and doors and doors with about a third of them being openable with stuff inside, and culminating in a slightly weird, slightly challenging sort of number code puzzle about picking up a Super Nintendo controller and entering in a certain code. You had to find a map to find out what letters corresponded to which buttons, and then another note for what buttons to press.
The note is the game's README file.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh god, that was the only puzzle in the game where I just said, you know what, screw this, I'm just gonna look up something online, and I was able to find it there. Like Zone 3 has frustrating puzzles, and then has a slightly gnarly theme to it when you discover where the sugar comes from, where they're scooping up murdered denizens of this land and throwing them into a furnace.
Yeah. And this is also where...
This is after a very odd mini game where you have to jump through a chimney and dodge ghosts.
Oh, I love that game.
Yeah. It doesn't really work, but I like it. But this is also the chapter where, because the judge is having his breakdown, Zachary, the shopkeeper, is filling in the role of the judge, and he's done so like he's like torn off Valerie's face, and he's wearing it as a mask, and he's just making meowing sounds when you talk to him, and it's just so sinister and horrible after everything that's happened to the judge's brother and the judge's grief, and then here comes the smiling shopkeep wearing the cat's face like it's a big joke.
And the shopkeep is also a bit of a weirdo in his own right.
Yeah, so he's already got a mask on, so he's put like a cat's face as a mask over his mask, and he's something else. I don't really know what's up with that guy. He gave me a bad feeling all the way through, but it seems like maybe that's a little bit unfounded. But yeah, Zone 3, it's an incredibly authoritarian area where there's rules everywhere, case in point being, follow this map or be attacked by ghosts, and there's, signs everywhere. There's like an authoritarian poster saying, in the dorm saying, you must have good dreams. But yeah, you find out that these people are being cremated and turned and caramelized and burned down into sugar, and it's a bad old time in there. This is where the battle music changes as well and becomes like instead of the kind of goofy old timey chopped and screwed remix they were using, it becomes a much more sinister kind of industrial percussive piece. So it kind of feels like this whole chapter is like a little bit of a turning point where everything kind of has gone to hell. There is still some comedy, but it feels a lot more sparse here in what was already a very, very sparse game.
And this also, I thought personally, lent more credence to my original theory that this was hell or purgatory, because this is the kind of activity you might see there. But and I don't think that is actually what's going on in the game. But it's it's a disturbing theme. It has some of the more frustrating areas to navigate. I think the only cool parts of Zone 3 are the chimney minigame and maybe the boss of it, which is amusingly a
the boss rules.
Yeah, a corporate director who is so massive and obese that he takes up an entire room.
Enoch, this fat, smiling man, and he calls this sugar factory his fortress, and he says, people were happy there until specters invaded, and he can't figure out why all the dead spirits are lingering, and I think it's probably because people are being thrown into his furnace. But I really love the way this guy looks. He's just so perfectly rotund, and he's got these rosy cheeks. And he chases you down a hall. And it's pretty great.
I enjoyed Enoch more than the rest of that part of the game.
I really enjoyed the Batter's bombast in speaking to him as well. He's got this very kind of like anime or RPG hero or even villain kind of monologue. He's like, "You demented child of evil, the last grain of stand has fallen through your hourglass." It's fantastic. And the first time you fight Enoch, you have to run away from him because he's just too powerful. But once he chases you down the hall, because he's so fat, he tires himself out, and that gives you a chance to finally beat him. And when you do, he reveals that whenever a leader of one of these zones dies, it's destined to disappear, and all people in it will disappear. And that kind of gives us the hint to go back and see some of this optional material, which is going back to the zones that have been purified. And you can do this at any time, but this was the first time I really had the thought to go and do it. And going there, you'll see it's exactly as Enoch said, and everything is pure white. We mentioned that there's these secretary demons that populate the world as quite frequent random encounters. Like all the signs have been wiped of their of their legible text, and all the people have been wiped out. So it's a bizarre RPG where maybe your quest isn't that noble after all.
Horrifying. You're just trying to purify the world, man. Because I was really curious, like, what, when you go back to the worlds, like, what are they like? And, it almost turns into, like, a horror survival game, because the random encounters are so difficult.
Yeah.
And, like, if you try to fight, like, a couple battles, like, you're gonna be on the, on the verge of a game over. So I ended up running away from most of those fights. But once you get to the purified world and zone 3, like probably their stats are so high or whatever that it's really hard to run away from the fights. And so it's like legitimately scary. Like you don't want to die and like have to do it all over again.
And those are the, especially in purified zones 2 and 3, that's where, they can poison you with almost every hit, and before you know it, your health is down to 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because the poison burn is really intense in this game.
But they look horrible too.
Yeah, you do get good items and equipment if you navigate through them, but I basically hacked through zones 0 and 1 and did just the beginning of zone 2. It's like, you know what? And beginning of zone 3 and decided that I didn't need to do this and maybe I could just beat the game.
Yeah.
And this was literally yesterday evening I was doing this. So I'm like, because I beat this game in 2 sittings, I should mention. The whole thing is probably about 5 hours. Mm-hmm. I was ready to beat the game by then, but I guess if you want more of the combat, you can engage in that, but it's really not necessary.
Well, you can get the game's equivalent of like the Silent Hill 2 dog ending by going back through these areas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the secret ending.
Yeah,
you gotta
we'll
get the secret
have to mention
ending.
that at the end.
Was that the choice you make at the end?
No.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Each of the purified areas has an item. It's prefaced with the adjective "great," and each corresponds to one of the elements of the world. And once
I definitely got at least one of those.
Yeah,
okay.
the grand finale, the grand dragonal, the grand spectral, the grand brachial, and the grand chocolatier. And once you gather them all, you can trade them to the shopkeeper for either the best bat in the game or the mysterious Ares card. But we'll get to that at the end because we're coming up because this is a short game. We're coming up to the end game here, and this is where I think this is where Off transforms from being a relatively surreal but narrative adventure into something a little bit more guided but still abstract. It felt a little bit more like something like Yume Nikki in a way. The judge is no longer with you, characters are no longer with you, and you're just kind of going through the paces, but you're kind of watching it unfold in front of you, and you're not really sure what anything means. The first thing you do in this final area is you go to this house that's illustrated like it looks like crayon scribbles, like a child has drawn this. It extends to the battle screen, which, each of the battle screens says battle time on the side of it. And in this area, it's drawn in like a very, very childish, poor, cursive. And so we start to get the story of this boy who we've seen coughing in between chapters. Like, his parents have left him alone, and he has to take these pills that he doesn't like, and he misses his father, but he doesn't really like his father, and it's a bad old time for him. And as we traverse this area, the batter kind of takes on the role of this boy and lives a few days in his life. Leaves his bedroom and meets the bosses that you've beaten before, Dedan, Japhet, and Enoch, and he befriends them. Like, he gives Dedan a calendar, and he gives Japhet a book, and then he convinces Japhet and his bird pals to lift Enoch out of a hole that he's fallen into. And when the four of these people meet and spend time together, these three, they're all not how they appeared in the game when you were fighting them. They're all like very good-hearted utopian philosophers who just want to make the best possible world. And you get these hints that there was a world and there was some kind of apocalypse or cataclysm that has torn it asunder. Mike, please go ahead.
I was just mentioning, after you do some very brief fetch questing to help out Enoch, Japhet, and Dedan, they each mention what their dream is, and how Dedan wants to make a place where everyone that wants to work can work, and Japhet wants a place where everyone can live comfortably, and Enoch wants to make cakes for everyone.
Yeah,
and it feels like these were people that that the child, or the child whom the batter is taking steps in the life of met. Like the child met these three friendly guys and made friends with them, and then made them the leaders of a world that he created, I guess. But then over time, just everything after the cataclysmic event, or maybe just sort of the darkness creeping out, turned these genuine good people and sort of twisted their utopias a little bit.
I wonder. A part of me has to wonder if they exist, or if I don't, because they're very seeing them in this way. They're very simplistic, like you would find in a child's story. Like as you said, he wants people to work because that's what adults do, and comfort and happiness is good too, and then also making delicious cakes for everybody. It's a very, very childish look at what makes a good society.
And also, Dedan is unusually tall, and Enoch is, of course, massive, so it made me think of, like, a child maybe meeting adults, and the adults seemed impossibly tall and impossibly large to him.
He calls them the tall mister and the big mister.
Right.
And
so I'm not sure if this was a real child who met real people, or if this was, some kind of dream or some kind of otherness. I don't know. This game is not easy to understand moment to moment.
I kind of think that's one of its strengths. It leaves itself up to so much interpretation.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should just jump right into that. Nilson, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was listening to you guys talk about, like, these three colorful characters, and we were talking earlier about how your three party members are, like, these, like, anti-personalities.
Yeah.
And then, like, if there was a JRPG from the little boy Hugo's perspective, like, those would be his three party members, which is kind of, I don't know, that's just something that I thought of.
Interesting.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I don't know.
He's very obviously a kid with a lot of imagination. Like when you're traversing this area, the map is like a child's scribbles of like a world map, and you find these comics in his room that functions as like a little like side RPG in itself, where like
I should mention
the Boxman and the Batman, the Ball Man.
Yeah. I think was it Boxman or Boxer with two X's?
Yeah, it's the Boxer with two X's fighting the Ball Man in Ballville.
Boxer versus Ballman was my favorite mini game of this whole because it was just running in a straight line and engaging in random battles where you dealt thousands of damage and just communicated power and heroism in a way that was clearly just like a ridiculous chapter of a shonen manga or something. It's like, yeah, this is my kind of joint. Why couldn't the whole game be Boxer versus Ballman?
The graphics in that section are really beautiful too. Like the pixel art's really spot on.
They mentioned
like
in
Bad
the credits,
Street Brawler.
In the credits they mentioned a different artist and or animator for that whole segment. So that was a guest spot, as it were. But it looks fantastic. I agree.
Yeah.
But so these three leaders, they're going to be in service of the queen. And whether she's a real queen or not, it's not entirely sure, just like everything else. But it is very obvious that this queen is the idealized version of Hugo's absent mother. And she's symbolized on this map as a sun that's shining in the sky. But when you try to go there at first, it says Mama's not here. So he's a kid who's been left on his own to deal with this debilitating illness, as well as, I guess, retreat into fantasy or make friends, whatever your interpretation of this plot is. And the game becomes more and more fragmented and strange at this point. Like, you'll go through a door and you'll be back at the title screen, where the only choice is to continue, and you've got these three save slots which don't correspond to your saves, which function as basically like three different doors, and you have to accomplish goals, get number puzzles, and get numbers to solve puzzles with, and go back and forth between these three saves. It's a clever little twist. I liked it.
The twist and traveling between the three saves, I thought was awesome. It was very clever.
Yeah, I didn't get it at first. It was great.
Yeah, I thought that I'd screwed up and the game glitched or something. And I had experienced glitches twice earlier in two areas in the same. You remember the place where you have to press shift to look at the map that we mentioned was annoying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pressed shift too many times that it switched to a shift filter on my PC, and which made the game crash. And then just after that, there's a segment where you have to find a password by using the scan or peep spell on an enemy and put that enemy's name into a an alphabet
door,
pad.
yeah.
But the version of the game I was playing, and you're right, it's Von Gacy is the name of the enemy. The version of the game I was playing didn't have a space bar in the letter pad.
Same here.
So I had to. So I was trying to use it with brackets and trying different spellings, and just it drove me crazy for a second until I just tried to do it without the space, and that solved it.
Yep.
But so again, with the save section, the different phases of it are chapters counting down from 5 to 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole save file thing, entering different versions of the room in that chapter, was very clever. But also has my least favorite puzzle in the game, where you're, at the end of one hall there is a sort of a design or some painting or tapestry or something.
Oh, this.
Yeah, exactly. And then in a different save file in the same chapter, there is a leaf pattern and a bunch of blank circles, and you're supposed to basically press the circles or activate the circles that have the leaf pattern pointing in that direction. And it was not clear to me at first.
Yeah. You really need to take a screenshot, and even then, like, that pattern that you see on this tapestry, or it looks like the back of like a playing card, it's just so intricate that it takes you a while to twig what you're supposed to be doing.
It's a bunch of leaves pointing in different directions, and you have to find the 6 leaves that are pointing, I think, to the left.
That's right.
And which not easy. It's like looking into a Magic Eye poster or something. It's just this this imparsible pattern. But so that was my least favorite puzzle in the game, and I've been rambling too much. Sorry.
Yeah, I love the save file shenanigans. I think that is really smart, and I don't really. Yeah, I loved that. I love the part where you're walking down the hallway and like your character sprite is upside down.
Right.
Yeah.
That was really amazing because like it's the same exact like control scheme, but like it really is kind of disorienting, which I wouldn't have thought would be the case, but it was like really disorienting when you first see it, and then you walk down the hallway and the character sprite slowly like shifts back to like the right orientation. I thought that was really cool.
I really love that.
It looked like it was communicating that you were walking upside down, but then the space you were walking on curved or something, but you maintained the gravity of walking along that path, like a like a gravity boots segment in a Ratchet and Clank game or something, or maybe like Sonic running a loop-de-loop. But it was it was a very, very cool visual effect that was a little like you said, Nilson, a little disorienting, but ultimately like, whoa, that was neat.
I'm trying to think if there are any other points like that in the final segment that were really unique. I really liked when you go to the house, like that shack or whatever, and the tile set. It looks like a real RPG Maker tile set that
it does, yeah.
they put like a Photoshop filter on. So I thought that was kind of cool in like a jarring way.
And it's got those trees that really don't belong with everything else that's there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the sky is really, really great. Has a great texture to it.
And they brought back the French calendar puzzles, which I'm not sure I wanted back. That was a bit of a confusing part of Chapter 1, or Zone 1.
Yeah. Early on, there's some calendar pages that have scribbles on them, and you have to like parse what these scribbles mean to answer some questions. And they're pretty basic, but they're disorienting at first. And it comes back later in a slightly different way. But it's I can't say it was my favorite part, but I did like these scanned calendar pages. Once you wring everything out of this final zone. You have your last save point and your last chance to go back to previous zones. This was the point that I did go back and start seeking out these hidden items. And there's not a whole lot to say that we haven't said already about the purified zones, but there was one thing that just like absolutely killed me, and that was going to the top of the library, and you can hear a sound effect of like a real cat crying. And you get up to the top, and it's the judge, and he's like crying out in grief, asking where his brother is, and he's just like crying out and listening to the echo and hoping that like the echo is his brother replying to him. And I was like, oh man, this really sucks. Largely, this is a pretty goofy game, but that pathos worked on me, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a cat person, but that hopelessness really did something for me. But you have your final encounter with the shopkeeper, and he says "Bin
shopkeeper."
Right before the final boss, the shopkeeper appears one last time, and he says "Bin Vincit, que sera Vincit in Victoria."
I do remember the Latin.
I had to look this up to see if this was a thing because I'm stupid, and this is a thing. This is a quote from Publius Syrus, a first century writer, and it means, "He who conquers twice is he who conquers himself once he is victorious." So make of that what you will. And that this takes us up to this final confrontation with the Queen, Hugo's mother, who warns us that this is not a good thing to be doing, and she expresses disappointment in your actions, but the batter is completely undeterred, and you have this final battle where the Queen has her own add-ons that are aiding her. Yours are Alpha, Omega, and
Epsilon,
and then hers are Delta, Sigma, and Ipsilon. So like she's the antithesis to the batter, and rather than these circles, she's got like these intricate kind of like fairy wings almost. Still very, very basically drawn, but there's a much more regal complementation to her than your sparse circles. And her attacks are like these warnings that wound you. Like the screen will go dark, and she'll say something like amusingly, she'll say "no dessert for you," or like "I'm just terribly disappointed." Once you put the queen down, she defeatedly says, she asks, "Would you like some cake, my love? He has your eyes." And the batter replies, "His eyes are full of fear." And that's when we get to like this final encounter, which is this battle with Hugo, who's crying in his room, and he just sits and cries while you just bludgeon him to death with your bat.
I thought that was going to be like a battle.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be one of those battles where like you can like not attack the enemy and then like something else will happen, but it wasn't the case. Like you have to kill him. Yeah. Or you have to at least fight him.
It's kind of like these kind of moments are kind of telegraphed early on as well. Like there's one point in Zone 3 where a tram is stopped and you have to go out onto the tracks, and you have an encounter with one of these workers with a burnt face, but he doesn't attack. He just keeps saying "help me" over and over again, and he's got loads of hit points, so you're just like wailing on him while he just keeps saying "help me."
And he defends, which makes the battle go on for a little bit further.
Yeah. So yeah, once we kill Hugo, his last words are, "I'm scared of the dark," and the batter replies, "From now on, there will be no more darkness." And we walk down this hall past Hugo's room, where there's a switch on a wall. But before we can reach the switch, the batter is stopped by the judge, who expresses disappointment and fury at the batter, but also at the player for killing a wife and son. And whether that means the batter's wife and son, I think they're kind of hinting that it is. He shouts, "You have not purified this place. You've destroyed it, eradicated it, and immersed it into pristine nothingness. And I should have detected the black flame that consumed your soul from the beginning." And that gives us this final choice, whether the judge makes this impassioned... Well, it's not impassioned. He's pretty exasperated because he's seen what you've done. And he's like, "Well, look, you can keep doing this, or you can just help me out and put this guy down." And that's where we have our final choice, whether to be the batter and kill the judge, or to be the judge and kill the batter. Nilson, what did you do?
Oh man, well I definitely did both. Like as soon as I did one, I did the other.
Yeah.
But I went with I stuck with the batter the first time.
Oh yeah?
And I fought the judge because at that point, you know, man, what else can I do? I'm already in it. I'm in it to win it. And it's real sad and horrible. And you just feel like such a jerk, you know, fighting this guy. You killed his brother, and now you're gonna kill him. You hit the switch, and I love this moment. It says the switch is off, which is the name of the game. And I kid you not, like I didn't remember that it did that. I was like laying in bed playing this game, and I jumped out of my bed and I was like, "What? Like, yes! Like, I love when that happens. Like, I love when they like go back to the title and the text. Like, I love that." So that was like it was like a bittersweet moment because like I knew I was being an asshole, but it was like a great game moment. And then I immediately went and did the other ending.
It's especially powerful because you don't know what the name, why this game is called Off, and it's never really alluded to why until that moment. And it's like, it felt to me like it's like a takedown of the entire JRPG. You know, you've done what you've been told. You've killed all of the hostiles, and you've killed every killable in this world. The game is over, and then you press the switch to turn the game off because it's done.
But, I didn't think of that interpretation, but my interpretation is probably all wrong. But,
yeah, but please, I think all interpretations are valid here. So please, Mike, do continue.
Okay, well, I envision this game as a little boy named Hugo who has some kind of terminal disease and has an absent father and a mother that at one point coddled him, and the boy eventually perhaps became absent herself as well. And I believe that the batter, who the boy visualizes as his missing father, is the disease who's killing the boy. So the boy who has been stuck in his room for maybe for a long, long time, came up with these elaborate fantasy worlds with these larger than life characters inhabiting them for portions of his sickness. But then as he became more and more afraid of death, the worlds became full of ghosts, and the happy characters that he had dreamed up took on dark turns. And the batter, who represents the disease and the boy dying, basically purifies or kills, or the boy forgets these worlds one by one until the batter confronts the boy's positive memory of his mother, his protecting angel. I envisioned her and her add-ons as sort of angelic wings instead of fairy wings. And at the very end, the batter confronts the judge, who's like Hugo's last vestige of consciousness, and turning the switch off is the boy dying. And if you choose the judge to fight back against the batter, then the boy's mind is gone, and perhaps he lives on as a vegetable. Was my weird interpretation of all of this.
I wouldn't say that's too weird. I mean, that sounds like, I think that's a very valid reading of what's there. I kind of like the metaphor of going through an adventure and at the end you turn the game off. I think that's sort of wonderful. Well, and, I kind of think that was just like, I think it can be read in many different ways. But I'm sorry, yes. do continue. No, that was basically it. Like I didn't really know what to think of going through this game. Again, my first guess was that this was some kind of crusader cleansing some kind of underworld. Yeah. But towards the end, I figured, okay, this is in the mind of a person, because as you were going back through chapters and seeing the life of this boy, I knew that the game had to be about the boy somehow. And after I beat the game and thought about it a lot, I figured that this was a child going through the last stages of a terminal disease, which is how I interpreted it. Yeah. But the game is open enough to interpretation that I don't think there's an invalid reading of it. I had a certain satisfaction finishing it. Like the fact that this game was not very long and was so thought provoking and had so many moments of interesting satire and humor. Mm-hmm. That I ultimately was, that was a dope little game. Good on you, Off. I do feel much the same view as your interpretation of what's going on. I think that this entire world is a creation of Hugo's imagination in the last stages of his life. And he talks about how in his journal that he doesn't really like his father. And he has to deal with this disease, and his father brings him this comic book that he doesn't like, which is Boxer Trouble in Ballville, where Hugo was absolutely incorrect, because the Boxer versus Ballman comic is a masterpiece. Yeah, it's awesome. But like the villain of this piece is the Ballman. So I don't know, is his father violent, or does he just see his father as this villain who's just not there for him, and when he is there, he's making him take pills he doesn't want to take. So he's created his father as this batter character who, like maybe there's an element of toxic masculinity there. He's swinging around this massive phallic object and like bludgeoning the only woman in the world to death. And his friends and everybody. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this yet, but when you kill ghosts. And all three bosses before the chapter with the room, there's blood splatter. Yeah, that appears in this game, and it's a very like you hear like a splat sound effect with blood splatter after defeating certain enemies, which is quite violent and visceral in its way. And so, if you interpret the game as the boy seeing his fantasy world destroyed by this batter, the batter is really a violent horrendous villain. When you put it that way, of like the sounds and the blood splatter, it's just made me think of like taking Ness's actions in Earthbound to its logical conclusion of going to town on all those animals and people with his Mr. Baseball bat.
Yikes!
I have to wonder if the bat was an intentional reference. I wouldn't put it past him.
I think that Earthbound is an influence to this game, especially parts of it feel like, your what's the alternate Foreside called?
Moonside.
Moonside, yeah.
This is a whole game of Moonside, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like this is the whole game of Moonside and Magicant. And for a second, I was about to say Dark Side, but I knew that was wrong. But maybe I've been playing, too much DC Comics injustice. But yeah, I think it's quite possible that the choice of a batter was because of Earthbound. Again, because Earthbound was, I assume or interpret Earthbound as an influence.
Mm-hmm.
I was also really reminded of Paranoia Agent.
Yeah, Lil Slugger.
Satoshi Kon.
Yeah. And like this like dude with a baseball bat who just like goes to all these places and like beats people up for also, no reason.
Yeah, and also the Slugger character is a creation of the People's Minds in Paranoia Agent, so which also logically fits with it.
No, it's fine.
Come on.
Yeah, there is a bit of like a sinister, like a sinister homage to Satoshi Kon going on here. Most definitely. That's a very astute observation.
Actually, this game came out right around the same time Paprika did, so I don't think Paprika could have been an influence, but Paranoia Agent for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the hidden ending.
Yes.
Which I know nothing about this hidden ending, so do tell.
Nilson, would you like to fill Mike in?
Well, so you go to all the purified worlds, and you get all those items, and then you have to go back to Zone 0, I believe, and you fight an NPC that's chained up in like the basement of Zone 0.
Yeah.
And there seems like there's like some backstory with this character.
Her name is Sugar.
Yeah, her name is Sugar, and I don't. Who knows what the backstory is? And she has like 1 million HP, more HP than like all other enemies. And then
you can poison her though, and poison works really well.
Yes, I didn't know that. I looked it up after, and I was like, I wish I poisoned her because that would have done damage. And then you go up to Zachary, if I'm remembering this correctly, and then you can make a choice to get a key item or like the strongest baseball bat in the game. And if you take the key item and then you have it in your inventory when you beat the game, you make your choice and like you see that ending and that all happens, and then after all of that you see the spaceship and then these apes come out of the spaceship.
Wait, okay, you see the spaceship and apes come out of the spaceship.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I don't feel there was foreshadowing for this.
No, it's the dog ending, man.
Yeah. And they talk about how I think they say something like now that like everyone's gone, like they can take over the world or something.
Yeah, they're gonna build a factory and make killer robots.
Yes.
And that's it.
And that's the ending. That's the real ending.
Somehow I don't think that's the canon ending.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds surreal and interesting, but I'm not sure I want to fight a boss with 1 million HP just to see it, I'm afraid.
And I guess that's off.
That sure was off. It was surreal and weird, but ultimately entertaining and thought-provoking. I'm glad I played it.
I noticed that there was a special thanks to Goichi Suda in the credits, and I think that's very fitting because a lot of the dialogue in this game reminds me of some of the stuff from the Silver Trilogy, like the absurd non sequiturs in Flower, Sun, and Rain in particular.
I think it's fitting that this guy is a Suda 5-1 fan. I'm not. I don't find it surprising.
Yeah. So, what did we all think?
Well, I said my thoughts already. I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, this game is not bad. If any of this conversation intrigued you at all, even though we spoiled the entire game over the course of this podcast, then I think it's worth checking out.
Or if you have played it, well, hopefully you enjoyed us talking about it. Nilson, anything else to say before we wrap up?
Just that, like when you start playing the game, like you're not really sure if it's going to be the real deal. Like it seems like it might, be kind of shallow, but once you start getting into it, like it's real weird. Like it's really legitimately weird and like legitimately worth your time if you're into like weird stuff or just like RPGs in general. I don't think you would ever forget it. It's a really cool game.
I mean, I did download this when it was current, but I don't even think I ever got out of Zone Zero. I think I dropped off at the time, but I was really excited to give it a go for the show, and in the end, I was really, really pleasantly surprised by it. And it does it pulls off that weirdness in like kind of like an effortless way, and it feels absurd and surrealist, but at the same time cohesive, and that like a lot of thought and a lot of love went into it. So it gets a big old thumbs up from me, even with its battle mechanics that don't exactly work in service to it.
The best part of the battles is the enemy art, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah. But that wraps up this episode of Retro Encounter. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. Next week we will be covering Undertale. I hope
a game that I am 99% certain was influenced by this game.
Most definitely. There's a lot of thematic crossover there, and we hope that fills you with determination. If you segue plug. If you'd like to know about more weird under the radar games like Off.
I know where this is going.
At RPG Fan this month, I'm launching a new column called The Radar, which will collate 2 or 3 unusual free or low cost games at the last week of each month. So do check back in at the main site.
And we should mention this game is available for free. You don't even need any RPGMaker software to play it. It's I found it on a download on the Off Wikia page, the unofficial Off Wiki.
Oh, nice.
And there's probably other places where you can find it with 1 or 2 quick Google searches. So $0 safe downloads. They're around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the total file size was like 80 megs.
Yeah, something like that. It's a teeny little game.
Which is like maybe which is less than an N64 game, I think.
If you want to write into the show, you can reach us at retro@rpgfan.com. We'd love to hear from you. We read all of your emails and comments. And you can also leave us an iTunes review, which always helps. But as we wrap up tonight, Nilson, where can people find you online? And is there anything you want to plug?
Well, I'm one of 2 people who run the RPG Fan Facebook and Twitter, so I'll be around. Hit me up.
Yeah, you and Steph do a really tireless job.
Oh, thanks.
And you're very much appreciated.
That is absolutely correct. And also, the Facebook page has been maybe more popping than I've ever seen it before. I have editing powers on the Facebook page, and I get like 10 plus notifications an hour. I should use them, honestly. But yeah, you and Steph are crazy occupied with the social media activity we get, and both of you do an outstanding job.
Oh, thanks.
Mike, where can people find you?
Right, I am Monsoon on the forums. I am at The Real Monsoon and at Evoker for Dogs on Twitter, and on the RPG Fan Discord, which is just called RPG Fan, and if you ask for permission to join, it will probably be granted quickly. I am Monsoon Mike.
And I'm on the boards as Towns Carmarty, and I'm on Twitter at Misanthrobob. And hit me up, and we'll talk about weird games. And, be sure to check out The Radar when it launches at the end of January. But until next week, folks, good night and good luck, to paraphrase one Mike Sollosi.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Happy little